Hey guys, welcome back to the Calvinist Contradiction. We're here today with another episode of Where is Calvinism in the Opening Narrative of the Bible. We're doing this because we believe that if Calvinism is the true interpretation of the Bible, then we would be able to clearly, plainly, consistently, coherently see it brought forth in the text. And so we're just asking the question, is this the case? We're on chapter 40 now, which we'll be getting into here in a minute. And we have not seen this to be the case. And so you decide. Wanted to first say thank you for your comments in the comment section. I can't respond to all of them personally. Obviously, there's a ton of them, but we want to thank you for subscribing. We want to thank you for liking these videos and sharing these videos. We also wanted to thank you for praying and considering helping out with us here financially and prayerfully with our ministry and in Asia Minor. And we are in this country right here, and we've been here for 10 years. We've had and are raising our kids here amongst the Muslim population. It's the least evangelized nation on the earth. And so we would really appreciate that. Also, a special announcement, we have a new Advent book coming out. This is apart from the Calvinist Contradiction. All the Calvinist Contradiction books are in the works. They are coming. But this was one that I have been working on for a while before, and it's a Advent devotion of the ancient Near East, an ancient Near Eastern Advent devotion. And basically the context of the Bible is the roots of the New Testament doctrine of a Trinitarian God found in the Old Testament. And that's because the New Testament writers' Bible was the Old Testament. So we don't think about this a lot. Where did the roots of the Trinity come from? And it's the Old Testament, and especially Yahweh's theophany of a man, where he shows up to humanity as a man. And so if you would like to get a free digital copy of this book, we want to give it away to you for free in return for a review. And so if you would like to do that, we'll send it to you today. You have 3 weeks to read it. It's about 60 pages, takes an hour to read it. We will give it to you for free today in hopes that you would leave a review, positive, honest review on Amazon for us within the first week that it comes out. And so if you'd like to, email us at the Calvinist Contradiction at gmail.com. The link or the email is in the description section. Also, if you do feel led to support us, pray for us, you can join our newsletter, which is in the link in the description, or you can give to our 501c3 or give to us through PayPal. 501c3 is tax deductible. So without further ado, we're hopping into the scriptures. Click on the link below. It's there. And we are looking at Joseph's dream. And so in the last episode of the Calvinist Contradiction, where is Calvinism in the Bible, we had a break in between. We did God meticulously control Lucy Litsby, who is the number one infant mass murderer in England's history? Did God meticulously control her to murder these babies in a horrible way? And the answer is no, but Calvinists say yes. And so we say your bologna sausage theology is ripe for the toilet, which needs to be flushed. But we'll prove that out of the text as well here. And so hop on in here. So it says, then it came about after these things. So we're going to just read the last sentence of the last chapter, because these things, it says, the chief jailer did not supervise anything under Joseph's charge, because the Lord was with him. And the Lord was with him in whatever he did, and the Lord made to prosper. So we say, not like the Calvinist. The Calvinist says, they conflate, they have two meanings for almost everything, but they conflate sovereignty, which sovereignty means God or whoever, the king or the president, can rule as they please. But the Calvinists have changed it to be God meticulously controls everything. And so the Psalm, I think it's 139 or 136 or something like that. I'm probably quoting it wrong, but it says that all of our days are numbered by the Lord. He knows all of our days. They interpret that as he controls meticulously all of our days. Again, going back to Lucy Litsby, who just murdered 7 prenatal infants. God did that for his own glory. We believe he does not. Why? Because the text tells us what God does or what he does not. And so before we hop in here, that's not what the Calvinists believe about this book, right? They do not believe it is effective unto salvation, as John says. They do not believe that this is the only inspired scriptures, because everything is inspired to a Calvinist, because God meticulously controls and writes everything. So this receipt right here is just as meticulously controlled, written by the hand of God for his glory as this text is. We do not ascribe that to be true. Madame Blavatsky's or Antion LaVey's satanic Bibles, her satanic writings, are not on the same par, not for the same purpose as this inspired scripture. We believe that this is the only thing that is inspired by God, and we believe that this was inspired by God so that we could have eternal life in his name by knowing who Jesus is, by reading these texts. And that's John 20:31. And so, all that to say, when we read these texts, the Calvinists are already starting off on a different place. So we're saying, look, it says here that the Lord was with him in whatever he did. So he's making a distinction here. The biblical authors making a distinction here of who is doing what. And the Lord is with Joseph. And let's see how this plays out. It doesn't say that he's with the jailer. It didn't say that he's with Pharaoh. It didn't say that he was with the sons who threw him in the well. It didn't say he was with the Ishmaelites who he sold him to. It doesn't say any of that. Why? Because the Bible is specific in what it says God does, because it wants us to know what God's doing, so we don't come away with a Calvinistic rendering that God is a mass murderer. What do we call him? The vampiric God who sucks the life out of other people, kills babies for his glory in unimaginable ways for his glory, so that he can have glory. He's the glory hog of Calvinists, because that's what literally they believe. I mean, I am not maligning here. This is what they all say. We will quote John Piper's Desiring God website one more time, because we always do it, and that's unimaginable as it may be to us today, that from the killings of Dennis Rader to the death camps at Birkenau and Auschwitz to the rape and sexual abuse of young children, it's not God allowing it, it is God doing it for his own glory. And so when we read these things, they're already thinking God's just doing everything. But as we just saw in that last chapter, and as this leads in, then it came about, that's not the case. God is going to tell us specifically what God's doing, so we can apply that to what God does, and not just think he murders people for his own glory, which is sick, which is a vampiric, demonic God, which is Calvinism. Calvinism's God. When it came about after these things, the cupbearer and the baker of the king of Egypt offended their Lord, and the king of Egypt. So who offends the Lord here? And why doesn't it say God made them to offend the Lord? So then God could make Joseph to interpret the dream, so on, as every Calvinist is going to be doing right now as we're talking when they're reading this. Yes, God made them offend. Who's the greatest deceiver of them all? Allah. Surah, I think it's 9. It's Calvin's God from, the Institutes. They are strange bedmates. They share a lot in common. 5 pillars of Islam, 5 points of T.U.L.I.P. The Calvinistic God is much more aligned with Allah, who is far off distance. You can't come to know him. In Allah, he set the world in motion. Now he's away because he's predetermined everything. What does Calvin say? Calvinism says that God has predetermined everything. He's far off and you can't do anything, you worm. What can a dead man do but lay on the slab? And so we are not maligning. We are not making this stuff up. If this isn't your flavor of Calvinism, it's because you're probably not a Calvinist. You're just under the tutelage of a closet Calvinist, or you've been deceived, or you're getting money or something and you don't want to rock the boat. I don't know. There's 1,001 reasons why you may be a Calvinist living in contradiction to your own belief system. And we will give you the benefit of the doubt. It's probably because your belief system is in contradiction to the Bible. So you would rather be, aligned with the Bible than with your bologna sausage BS theology, which you're going to just dump when we press you on it anyway. And so these are things that we deal with a lot on this show. And if you're out there and you're hearing this, we want you to respond to the Lucy Litsby murderer vicariously by God. God, that's God actually doing it. So respond to that before you respond to anything. That's what we'd like to hear from you. And so Pharaoh was furious with his two officials, the chief cupbearer and the chief baker. So he put them into confinement in the house of the captain of the bodyguard in the jail, in the same place where Joseph was in prison. Again, he did this. He was infuriated. Actually, it was God infuriated, and then God, he needs to get his fury out because he's a fury hog. He's a sexual hog. He's all these kind of hogs, and he just needs more and more. And so he just uses people to, get out his sexual promiscuity, his fury here. This is what he has to do. No, it says that this guy, Pharaoh, the king of Egypt, gets mad. And what does he do? He puts him in a prison, and Joseph's in that prison. And so here we go. The captain of the bodyguard put Joseph in charge of them, and he took care of them, and they were confined for some time. So who put them in there? God meticulously controlling him? No, the narrative doesn't say that. I understand that's how you render it, but you don't follow the biblical narrative. You follow John Calvin's narrative of Romans 9, and then you have to come back in and you got to plop it in here. And if you think that I'm just making this up, go and check out Basil. He posted a comment response to me on Genesis 30, I think it was 8, and I think he did one on 39, and see where he goes almost automatically. He says, I can interpret these texts for you. Boom, Romans 9 comes back. So these guys just do this all the time. That's why they can't see what is going on here in narrative as the Bible, or with the Bible as a literature. And then the cupbearer. Okay, and then the cupbearer and the baker of the king of Egypt, who were confined in jail, both had a dream the same night, each man with his own dream, and each man with its own interpretation. When Joseph saw them in the morning and observed them, behold, they were dejected. He asked Pharaoh's official who were with him in confinement in his master's house, why are your faces so sad today? And then they said, we have had a dream, and there is no one to interpret it. Then Joseph said to them, do not interpretations belong to God? Tell it to me, please. And so, doesn't everything belong to God? Doesn't nightmares belong to God? Doesn't, our fears belong to God? Doesn't any of those? No. What does he say here specifically belongs to God? The interpretation of the dream, a gift. A gift is interpretation of dreams, of visions, and so he's recognizing that, hey, interpretations belong to the Lord. I know this personally in my own life. I wouldn't say I have the gift of interpreting dreams, but one day I went to my language tutor's house, and she was sitting there, and I was like, said the same thing. Hey, why do you seem different today? I had this really crazy dream last night. Oh, okay. Well, why don't you tell it to me? I don't know. I'm not going to interpret it. I don't have that gift, but I'll listen to it. And she told me, and when she told me for the first time in my life, I was like, I know what that means. Now, I had been reading this book called Seeking Allah, Finding Jesus. It had something super similar to that, but in that minute where I didn't say I was going to interpret your dream. I didn't know I was going to interpret the dream. I didn't know what the dream was, but God gave me the interpretation to that dream. So just like he says, this interpretation is from God. And I was able to interpret her dream and help her out. It's the only time. I don't think I have that gift all the time. This was like downloaded to me. And so, is this him? Is this, the silver bullet for Calvinism? We finally found it. It's the interpretation of the dream belongs to God. Therefore, we can make a second interpretation for this. That means everything's from God, because in Calvinism, if you can't make the first thing work, just make up a second one that's phony, false, and deceitful, and then people will believe it because you believe it. I guess. I don't know. Is that the true interpretation here, or is it like my experience and what the text actually says that the interpretation belongs to the Lord? I would go with the latter. So the chief cupbearer told his dream to Joseph, and Joseph said, in my dream, said to him, and Joseph, and said to him, in my dream, behold, there was a vine in front of me, and on the vine were three branches, and as it was budding, its blossoms came out, and its clusters produced grapes, ripe grapes. Now Pharaoh's cup was in my hand, and so I took the grapes and squeezed them into Pharaoh's cup, and put the cup into Pharaoh's hand. Then Joseph said to him, this is the interpretation of it. In 3 days, the three branches are 3 days. Within 3 more days, Pharaoh will lift up your head and restore you to your office, and you will put Pharaoh's cup into the hand according to your former custom when you were his cupbearer. Only keep in mind when it goes well with you, and please do me a kindness by mentioning me to Pharaoh to get me out of this house. So, okay, Calvinist Joseph here is not getting the memo, right? That's what we're seeing here, because uh, Joseph, don't you know that it's only God before the foundation of the world who eternally decreed for your time to get out of the jail, to get out? And so, why, Mr. Calvinist Joseph, here are you, refuting the decrees of God? Who are you, O Joseph? Who down here we're interpreting to say that you are a Calvinist because you're telling us that interpretations belong to God, and we are going to, play that out to the fullest of Calvinism, say everything belongs to the Lord. So we're going to make up a new meaning to it. I plug in the Calvinist agenda here. Just make a new meaning. That interpretations belong to the Lord. Everything belongs to the Lord. God meticulously does everything down to rape, killing, and destroying, because that's what he does. And now you're missing the mark here. I guess the Calvinist Joseph in their own worldview. So Calvinists out there, if you're listening, I don't know who's the one who's watching or who is watching. Type in the comment section right here so we can read it. What is this? And how is this aligned with your system at all? Only keep in mind when it goes well with you, and please do me a kindness by mentioning me to Pharaoh to get me out of this house. Right? So he's trying to persuade him to do what? To persuade the Pharaoh to get him out of the jail. And so Pharaoh, for I was in fact kidnapped from the land of the Hebrews, and even here I have done nothing that they should have put me into the dungeon. And so, what's he trying to persuade him to do? To get him out of the dungeon. Where is persuading? What does persuading have to do in Calvinism? What does trying to convince somebody? We saw these in the prior chapters with Esau and Jacob, where Jacob is trying to convince his brother not to murder him when he comes by giving him gifts and stuff. So where's their convincing? Where is what's the point of prayer, right? What's the point of a dream in Calvinism? Which are to convince, which are to petition, right? That's what a prayer does. All those things make no sense in your systematic. And you just have to make up some baloney sausage to tell us, to try to align yourself so we don't expose you for the Gnostic heretic, which you truly are. When you say that there is, God has predestined everything according to his eternal decree and we can't do anything. So what's convincing? What's praying? What's trying to persuade? See how it all falls apart when you read the Bible as it's supposed to be written, as it's supposed to be read, as it's written as literature in a narrative. So he's not a Calvinist here. He's not rendering anything as a Calvinist. He's not theologically, he's not thinking like a Calvinist. So why are you? Oh, because you read Romans 9 back into the text? Exactly. Get a consistent theology, my friend, and place yours in the dung heap or in the toilet in flush. Walk away and get a tenable theology. When the chief baker saw that he had interpreted favorably, he said to Joseph, I also saw a dream, and behold, there were 3 baskets of white bread on my head, and in the top basket there were all sorts of baked goods for Pharaoh, and the birds were eating them out of the basket on my head. Then Joseph answered and said, this is the interpretation. The 3 baskets are 3 days. Within 3 more days, Pharaoh will lift up your head, from you and will hang you on a tree, and the birds will eat the flesh off you. Thus it came about on the third day, which was Pharaoh's birthday, that he made a feast for all of his servants. And he lifted up his head of the chief cupbearers and the head of the chief baker among his servants. He restored the chief cupbearer to his office, and he put the cup into Pharaoh's hand. But he hanged the chief baker just as Joseph had interpreted to them. Yet the chief cupbearer did not remember Joseph, but forgot him. And so, what would that point of that last thing right there be said? Yet the chief cupbearer did not remember Joseph, but forgot him. Remember, this is as a narrative. And so, every single piece of information on this paper is trying to communicate something not only to us now, but especially for a first century audience in the New Testament, and then of course way older audience for when this text came out in the Second Temple period, and when it was related to people via vocally, or when it's storytelling. So this everything in here is placed to tell us something. And so, what is the purpose of this? Yet the chief cupbearer did not remember Joseph, but forgot him. In a Calvinistic, deterministic, systematic, there's no point for this saying. That's what I'm trying to tell you right here. This is worthless, useless information in a deterministic worldview. Why? Because it should just say God had not decreed him to be released yet. And in fact, it shouldn't even say anything, because God just decrees. The Bible should just be one thing: shut up, God decrees, that's it. You can't be saved by reading anything. You can't come to the knowledge of the Lord by doing anything. You just shut up, you sit there, and if you've been saved, I guess you'll know. And if not, then you won't know. And if you're saved, you still don't know. So just shut up. And who are you, old man? So the whole thing falls apart because it's just trash. It's just stronger words, but I won't use those right now. It's just nonsense. It's nonsensical. And when you read the Bible as it's supposed to be written, as literature in an ancient Near Eastern context, and you remember that the Bible is written not to everybody, but for everybody. Who's it written to? A first century audience, or a Second Temple period audience, or, orally it was being told to people in that time and space when the Bible was still taking its form. And then it's for everybody. So we definitely shouldn't take some doofus reformer, of Calvinism. We definitely shouldn't take some, Gnostic idea that comes from Augustine. He was a Gnostic for 10 years, just carried all that trash over into Christianity, gave it a new name. But everything that they believe is Gnostic. That God is ultimately the evil one who just, kills, rapes, steals, destroys. He does it all for his glory. And then the devil is just left to be, obedient. So it's the demiurge. He's the top one, the most high, the holy, the holiest of holy. He becomes the vampiric, the demonic God. So that's how we know that Calvinism is Gnosticism. It's brought over by a Gnostic. One, that's enough for us right there. But also, when you scrape off all the stuff and you look at the skeleton and you look at why it's so different from Christianity proper, is because it's just Gnosticism wrapped up in a Christian package. But then for you to swallow the pill, you sign on the dotted line, you get a bunch of money. If you're a pastor, for you to swallow the pill, you just make up a second will. Just make up God's will is for us to what? Know him. What does God want? He wants you. He wants me. He wants everybody. He wants a big old family. He wants everybody that's ever been created, ever born, to join his family. That's why he sent forth his son. That's why his son shed his blood for us. He doesn't have to shed blood to get glory. That's vampiric. Read Dracula and see what Dracula does in that. Takes the life blood for his own glory so that he can live. That's what they're trying to tell us God's like. And that's what our last video was on, was these poor babies that Lucy Lisby made out, meticulously planned, not by the control of God, by her own wickedness and then was killing them in the prenatal care. That was her will. That wasn't God's secret will. It's only one will of God, that you would be saved, that you would come to know who Jesus is. He laid down his life for this. He laid down his son's life. This is why. This is his will. Not some secret will. Not some bologna sausage. Not something that you need to be tricked into to keep somebody's BS ministry running. So if you're hearing any of this from these literal fools, you have every right to ignore them, because they don't even believe in this in the first place. They're just saying this is just as valuable as this. If they don't believe that, that's in theory. That's how their systematic looks at it. So ignore them. Find a better church. Start a better church if you can't find one. So I love you guys. Again, if you want a free copy of our Advent book that's coming out in return for a review on Amazon, we'd love to give that to you if you just reach out to us at thecalvinistcontradiction@gmail.com. Again, share, like, comment on these videos, and we will see you again for another episode of the Calvinist Contradiction, probably on Thursday. So I love you guys. We'll talk to you soon.